Okay, so now we're going to kind of talk about stencils and screen printing. So in simplest terms, a stencil is a sheet with a design cut out of it. So painting or spraying over the sheet transfers the design onto the picture surface. Stencils are a quick way to make lettering or repeated designs on walls, but here we will consider them a method for making multiple works of art. And the stencils are a favorite method used by street artists who like to communicate political messages because they permit fast fabrication without the need for redrawing each time, and so that they can get away faster from law enforcement. So we'll take a look at a piece by Kim McCarthy. It's called Urban Buddha from 2009. So she used a lot of stencils and mixed media on canvas, and it's 36 inches by 48 inches. And remember, with stencils, shading is not possible with this method. It's just simple areas of color, basically. So let me change the thing, and I'm going to plug my computer in. So Kim McCarthy is a Seattle-based artist who also uses the alias Urban Soul. And so this is her Urban Buddha from 2009. And it shows many repeated patterns in the background that she achieved with stencils using blue and green paint. And there's some black here too. So this is another stencil that is repeated. Here's one here and here, I believe. And just a lot of layering of stencils here. The black skulls in the dominant Buddha image are also made using stencils. So the drawback to using stencils is that only a positive and negative spaces are produced, so shading is not possible. She overcame the possible pitfall of the image becoming boring by adding a lot of different colors and a lot of brush strokes and paint drips, so she's added some texture as well to kind of spruce it up a little bit, because with stencils, since there's no shading, it can get kind of boring. So the trails of black and white paint also suggest the quick execution of street art. So the use of stencils, the dripping paint, the spontaneity of it, and the quickness that it seems to have been executed with is all kind of harkening back to street art. So we're going to talk about screen printing now. It's kind of like stencils, but taken to the next level. So early in the 20th century, the stencil technique was improved by attaching the stencil to a screen made of silk fabric stretched across a frame. So today we don't use silk, we just use a synthetic fabric. But it kept its name silk screen from the silk fabric that was traditionally used in this process. So ink is pushed through the fabric in the open areas of the stencil. So we'll take a look at this to make the image of the stencil on the paper being printed. So the paper's underneath the screen. Here's the frame with a piece of silk or synthetic material. And then there's a stencil. And then you put the ink down, you take the squeegee, and all the ink goes through the areas of the stencil and onto the paper. And so that's kind of the basic process of silkscreen. And it's well suited for the productions of images with areas of universal color or uniform color. And each separate color requires a different screen. And there's no reversal of image in screen printing, in contrast to like relief or intaglio or lithographic processes. So there's no reversal of the image with screen printing. And it lends itself to poster production, and many social movements use silkscreen to help spread the word of different movements out there, social movements. So we'll take a look at a piece by Jesus Barraza, probably. We Are Fighting, portrait of activist Milan Loic, and a quote from one of her essays. So it's an excellent example of silkscreen being used as kind of like for a poster format for an activist type message, really. So she is an activist that has really worked to draw attention to climate change. So she writes a lot of opinion pieces in newspapers, and she protests the burning of coal to generate electricity. And this print is an example of silkscreen art and a memorable summation of the activist and her position. So it has one of her quotes on it with a really kind of blocky, colored portrait of the activist. So a more mechanical procedure in screen printing is the photographic stencil, or a photo screen, achieved by attaching light-sensitive gelatin to the screen fabric. And this allows the transfer of a photograph to the screen print stencil. So you can actually really get a kind of realistic photo-based print from screen printing with the photo screen technique. So Andy Warhol used this in his piece Gangster Funeral, and he created some variations by how much ink he actually squeezed through each time, and he just stacked the same image up over and over again. And Andy Warhol, Gangster Funeral, 1963, acrylic and silkscreen ink on canvas. So he actually used the photo-based screen prints. They were used often in the 60s and 70s, and this is called the Gangster Funeral, and he has basically reproduced a news photo of the subject 5 times onto the screen. And it's probably a famous gangster that died in New York City, and he's just maybe possibly making a commentary on how the media is publicizing this man's private event, such as his funeral. Even though he's a gangster, maybe he deserves a little bit more dignity than what the media is giving him. And so the 2 white masses in the photo are heaped up piles of snow, and above each white mass is a group of mourners standing to the side of a casket decorated with flowers. Kind of hard to see, but he caused the variations and the repetitions of the photo by varying the amount of ink that the squeegee pushed through the screen. So some have more ink coming through and they're darker because of that. Moving on, so contemporary approaches. So in recent years, experimental printmakers have taken on new types of printing materials and digital technology. So more artists are also taking the idea of multiple artworks into the 3rd dimension. Each of these has really altered the boundaries of the medium. So Michelle Murillo uses printmaking process in new ways. While doing personal genealogical research, she found some official identity documents belonging to her ancestors. So she photographed these and printed them onto sheets of sandblasted glass that she made by hand. So here they are. And she used a photo transfer process similar to silkscreen to embed the image onto the surface of the blue glass, and the overall effect resembles a faded ID card floating on the ocean, which is reflected in the title Adrift. So this work is part of a series that kind of highlights the frequent ocean crossing migrations that the artist's ancestors made. So here's that ID card here. And so she's kind of symbolizing the crossing of the ocean by her ancestors. So many printmakers today combine printmaking techniques with other media. So one of these is Nicola Lopez. She uses woodcut and lithography to create installations that are specific to each exposition. So she created a work, Blighted, from 2006, and she printed on Mylar, which is a transparent film. And her images of shattered buildings and tumbling structures are based on her memories of the attacks on September 11th from 2001. So digital technology has really altered printmaking at a basic level by eliminating the tangible plate. So a digital matrix is made not by hand, but with a keyboard and mouse. And then some artists make digital prints using painting and photo editing programs, and then they erase the matrix files when the edition is complete. This technology allows the creation of prints that are not original in the traditional sense, but they're infinitely reproducible, basically. So in 2007, the English duo Gilbert and George who do not use their last names, made a print available for a free download on the internet for 36 hours, and the edition was limited not by number of downloads, but by the clock. So that's kind of an interesting way of doing things. So we also have an artist, Brenna Murphy, Rainbow Array 1, 2015, 3D printed sandstone. So this is a new kind of process that digital technology has made possible, and it's 3D printing basically. And she created this piece. And it's basically digital printing in 3 dimensions makes possible another sort of additioned work, basically. The artist creates a design in 3 dimensions using a modeling software, and then a 3D print is made from a 3D printer. And it's not a print in the traditional sense, but it is not an impression. But it talks about it, we talk about this because it's a limited edition made by an artist. So Brenna Murphy's Rainbow Array 1 is such a work, and she actually sold this in an edition of 4, which she sold online. So this is kind of a new way of approaching printmaking. So as we've seen from the various examples of this lecture, prints have been used throughout the centuries to produce multiple copies of an image. Because printmaking is less expensive than other media, it can be more easily distributed, and works can reach a wider audience. And so that pretty much wraps up the lecture. I'm sorry, I'm really kind of tired today, and I don't think I did as good of a job as I could have, but kind of just need to get this done. So hopefully next week will be a little bit less shoddy than this week was. So apologize for that.